Have you ever been driving down the interstate and, you have to take a rest break, right? But you see some sights along your travels, and this video is about one such site. I was traveling I-81 North, had to take a rest stop, and there was just a field, a beautiful field. This was someplace in Virginia, and this field had all these Angus cattle in it, and it was early morning, probably about 8 o'clock, and it was beautiful. So I just kept taking pictures. And that's what today's painting's about. It's about the inspiration. You never know where you're going to find it, even if it's at a rest stop along the interstate. So this is the piece that I did, okay? So this is the completed piece. And it just had good feels for me. I just liked it. I loved the light. I loved, as I was driving, I was looking at the sky, and the sky had that just kind of a neat yellowy cast to it. By the time I got to the interstate, to this particular rest spot on the interstate, the sky was already quite blue. But I remember remarking in my mind how beautiful the sky was. And I am one of those people who sees something while I'm walking, while I'm traveling, or whatever, and I start to break colors down in my brain. And I was like, I got to do a painting with that kind of yellow sky. And so that's what I did here. So if you like this sort of thing, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and we'll go ahead and get started on this painting of the Angus cattle in the field.
And these are some of the photos that I saw at the rest stop on I-81. And I was inspired. What can I say? So once I got back to the studio, I went ahead and grounded a super slick substrate. This is a gessoed panel with the color that I used was Indian yellow. It's a transparent color, so it vibes well with what I'm trying to do here. And then I just used a very small brush and used raw umber paint, another transparent color, to kind of sketch on my composition for what I wanted to do here. And that's what you see.
Okay, now what you saw me starting the painting out, I grounded the substrate, which happens to be a gessoed masonite panel, super, super slick. This is Indian yellow, and that's by Michael Harding. I have the raw umber is what I used to sketch it on. So this is the raw umber. I just recently squirted out some Payne's Gray, ultramarine blue, titanium white, cad green. This is Phthalo Emerald by Michael Harding. I have, this is Sap Green by Winsor Newton, and Michael Harding's King's Blue. So I'm going to play with this. This is going to be fun. This is just experimental today. We're having a good time.
Okay, so since I know my grounding that I just did of the Indian yellow is basically still wet, I just took some titanium white and a little bit of Payne's Gray. It's a very small amount, but I'm putting this directly onto that Indian yellow. So it's giving me that sky that I wanted. I wanted that yellow sky of early morning. And I remember remarking as I was driving, even before I got to the rest stop, how I just kept trying to break down the colors of the sky in my mind because it was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I loved that warm yellow glow. And of course, folks, this is art, right? So you can make your own interpretation of what you want the sky to look like. But that's what I'm putting down here. It's basically, and you can see the color on the palette is mainly, it's mainly white, and I'm picking up a little bit of the Indian yellow, but I'm trying to lighten it up just a little bit more. But I'm digging it. So I'm taking my super soft 279 series rosemary brush. And it's a very super soft brush. It's great for blending, especially if you're painting on a slick substrate, as these gessoed panels are. They're masonite, so there is not a lot of tooth there. And to give it that smooth surface, you really need to use softer brushes. as I start into the background, and what really attracted me about this was the negative space that was underneath the trees, that the trunks and the trees caused with the background. So I'm kind of popping that in there, and I'm primarily using the cad green, but I'm mixing a little bit of the raw umber in and titanium white. That's really what I'm using here. I wanted my values to be far from the sky. I wanted to keep it kind of pushed back a little bit, and I'm kind of taking advantage of that wet surface, painting wet on wet. This is basically an alla prima piece, so it did take me 2 days to finish it, but I would almost call this alla prima, because basically I started late in the day and came back in and finished it the next morning. But yeah, so I'm keeping the background super soft, super lighter in value, just because I know I want to push it back a little bit. And I'll keep picking up a little tiny bit of blue. I've got the King's Blue, and it doesn't look like I hit it yet, but I think I did at this point. I think there was a little King's Blue into that green, but just popping that in. And here, I'm going to be, I'm using also I'm using a softer brush just to blend it in a little bit more and keeping it soft. So I'm putting a little bit more color in. Well, now I'm jumping into the trees. And the trees, because the light is basically coming from behind, the front of the trees are going to look rather dark. So I'm using a combination of the blue, the ultramarine blue, raw umber, and the green. It's the phthalo green, emerald phthalo green. And of course, I have my handy dandy paint scraper, which is great for making holes, what I call windows, or holes where the light is coming through on the trees. Now, here you can see that the edges of the trees have that yellowy glow to them. And again, the advantage of doing the Indian yellow grounding offers that to me. It gives it's a very natural way of getting that kind of that glow. And the neat thing too is the fact that all the windows that I'm cutting in here with the paint scraper are also showing that Indian yellow. Now here we're getting into some of the area that I wanted to get into so bad, and that was the negative space. So I loved the light playing between the trunks of the trees. And so here I'm just kind of laying in the trunks, and I'm using it's a very soft, fine point round brush. It actually was a gift from, it was a freebie that Scott from Jerry's Artorama gave me. So I love trying out new products and letting them know how things are working. And I have to say, this little brush is doing the trick. It's doing a really good job. But anyway, so putting in the trunks of the trees and getting all that good stuff in. And then I'll just kind of move into a lot of the shadows of that the trees cast with the light coming in from behind. Now it's time to add some cows. And by adding cows, we're going to use that little paint scraper. Since everything's alla prima and wet, I just have to scrape them out. So I'm scraping out some of the shapes of the cows. And this first cow, it's funny. I went for this cow. I don't know why. It was one that I actually saw that was in the photo reference that I was working from. And I thought at first that this was going to be my predominant cow, but you'll see that eventually I really don't put a whole lot of detail into these cattle. They're basically representational shapes in this field, holding a spot, so to speak, for this painting. It's the black Angus, right? So I'm just going to scrape it out first, and I'll scrape out some more shapes. And I can always refine by putting in more paint. If I took a little too much out, or if I need to refine the shape, I can go back and forth with the paint scraper and the paint, just enough to create these shapes. And that's what I'm doing here. And I'm starting with the dark values first on this cow. And even though this is a really tiny piece, the painting itself is only a 9x12. So you can figure that this cow is actually quite small. And again, it's just representational. So, and then I'll just, highlight the cow and the musculature and all that stuff with a little bit of this. It's basically a gray made with the King's blue and a little bit of white and whatever muddiness was already on my brush from putting in the ivory black. So I'm just kind of popping that calf in, or that cow in, and then I'm blending the edges and just creating that look of a cow. Again, no detail here, folks. It's all just very representational. And but you can feel like that might be a cow. Just carving out more cattle and painting them in. It's interesting because I I kind of, I didn't actually use the cattle's, the combination of the cattle that were in my photographs. I took some and broke them up and just tried to make something that looked somewhat random but offered something nice to the composition of the piece. And so this, what I thought was going to be my foreground cow, I just thought it missed something. So I decided to go ahead and put a cow and calf in the immediate foreground. And I just went and found another picture that I liked that was going to serve the purpose of this cow and calf. This particular pair didn't even exist in my original photo references, but I just thought it would be nice to have something a little bit more representational of the breed here in the painting. So, just carving it out with the paint scraper, and then I'll add the paint afterwards. And you can see I'm adding more paint, and really still very little detail is going into this because I didn't want the cattle. This is not necessarily a painting about these cattle. I just wanted the cattle to be able to offer something to the composition of the piece. But of course, these are the foreground cattle, so they were going to have a little bit more detail in them than the cows in the background. But there you go. I'm just kind of popping it in. Mostly, you can see I'm using a lot of blues. I'm using Purple Lake and King's Blue, Ivory Black, Little Payne's Gray. So that's really what's going into these cattle. So I'm just adding a little shine where I can and just popping everything in here. Now keeping in mind that the light is coming from the back. So I had to kind of adjust my lighting on my cattle to represent where the light was coming from in this piece. So just doing a little adjusting, but again, not a lot of detail. still working with that neat little freebie brush that Scott gave me from Jerry's Artorama. But I'm putting a lot more of the detail in the grasses in the foreground. I wanted to push the initial cow that I did in the very beginning, the one right there, that's not quite center, but I wanted to push her back a little bit more because of her size. She's considerably smaller than the ones I put in the foreground, so I wanted to give it even more to appear as though there were more distance between the two. So, keeping less detail in the background behind that little calf or that cow and putting the detail in more towards the foreground does create that illusion of space. And also, folks, where I signed my name on this, I did it with the paint scraper. It looks bright yellow, which is awesome because that's why I grounded with the Indian yellow, right? So I'm actually kind of putting in a little bit of dirt and a little bit of grounding, if you will, in the back where the trees are, because I have that grove of trees and it's not like they're all in one straight line. There's several trees in there. So I'm kind of creating that depth that needs to belong in that background too. And at this point, I'm just kind of looking around the piece and seeing what I need to add and what needs to change. Do I need to work on any of the values, etc. I've always kind of look around a little bit and usually wind up just putting a little bit more light in the trees, and I'm getting ready to be done. Adding that light at the very end of the painting and just creating more windows through my trees. It just gives it just makes them more airy and more sparkly. I don't know, I just think this is the fun part. Sorry about the glare there. My light was coming in from that side and it was just kind of creating a little bit of a glare. Fun with wet paints, right? But folks, if you have any questions about anything you've seen in today's video, don't hesitate. Just go ahead and leave it in the comments section. I'll get to you. And if you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing, please. It's free, right? And you can ring the bell and know when the next video is going to come out. Yeah, we're going to get ready to wrap this one up. I hope you enjoyed today's video. This was a fun one. Again, based on, you never know where inspiration's going to come from. It can come from a rest stop on I-81. You never know. So always be on the lookout for inspiration. And when it strikes, take advantage. Most of us carry our phones with us these days. Go ahead and you're always got a camera, so snap pictures and find that inspiration. our finished piece. This is a 9x12, and it was a really, really fun one to do. I really had fun with the sky, the colors, all of it. And I hope you enjoyed today's video.
Anybody who knows me knows I love painting with green. Green is one of my favorite colors anyway, but you'll notice that I mix a lot of blues or browns, or even I try to gray it down just a little bit. And oftentimes when I'm painting, I even put a little tiny bit of something red, either burnt sienna or something that's got a little bit of red down, just to tone the green down just a little bit. I was using primarily the cadmium green, which is very opaque. So you need to understand, if that's going to be your intense warm color, you're going to have to either, some ways you have to tone it down. And with an opaque color, it can be a kind of a challenge. So that's why having a little something like cadmium red and equally strong pigment with the same type of opacity does help with toning it or bringing it down just a little bit. Yeah, this was fun. And now I kind of added different cattle along the way. I wanted that general feel. I really liked the negative space in this painting. This painting had the negative space under the trees, and for me, that's always fun. And playing with the light, that's the other thing. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you did, give me a thumbs up and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and consider joining my membership program here on YouTube. So from Kingsport, Tennessee, I want to say thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.